We're going to go ahead and get started. I would like to call this meeting to order. Dr. Thomason, roll call.
President Reese, members of the board, please let the record show that we have all 5 board members present tonight.
Thank you. We are going to have our moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. We would like to ask that you keep community members and friends and family. We have lost several members of our community recently, and tragically, so we ask that you keep them in your thoughts, please. We're at 4.0, the approval of the agenda. I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Any questions or comments regarding the agenda? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. 5.0, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Thomason?
President Reese, members of the board, at this time I'd like to turn it over to Michelle Reese to have some recognitions of some special students and employees for this school this month. Michelle.
Testing. Thank you. I'd like to first invite Mr. Aaron Harris forward. He's got some special students to recognize.
Thank you. Good evening, President Reese, members of the board, Dr. Thomason, cabinet, members, staff, and members of the Higley community. This evening, we would like for you to help celebrate the reclassification of our English language learners for 2017. So please give those students a round of applause, please. Thank you so much. This evening, and I'm not sure if all are present, we plan to recognize 24 students who reclassified and are now proficient and have exited our program. Students, parents, if you're here, please raise your hand. Thank you. So principals, your students, parents are here. So at this time, again, we have 24 students that we plan to recognize. Again, if they show, some may show late. We'll call our students to the front. We have an award for them. And then afterwards, parents and staff, we have cookies and punch in our staff workroom for you all to enjoy. I just want to point out, too, before I turn the mic over to our first principal, that we speak over 24 languages in our school district this year. That's quite impressive, from Vietnamese to Arabic, languages that I can't even pronounce. So again, thank you, parents, for the job you do, teachers, staff. Again, thank you. So at this time, I would like to call Christine Hansen from Chaparral. Are you here with us? Thank you. Come on up. Thank you. Yes, and Ms. Orlowski would like to present. So our staff, I'm sorry, this is Heather Orlowski. We have Lori and Steiner Brady in the back. We have our 2 aides, Miriam Mendoza, Christina Kachapin, and we have our new ELL clerk who's outside waving, Sheila Nowell. Thank you all.
All right, thank you. Good evening. We're very excited to be here this evening, especially for our Chaparral Sharks. So when I call your name, come on up. We've got a certificate for you. And Aaron, do we just stay up here with all of the schools? Okay, for our school. Okay. All right. Can I please have Crizel Joy Odongo come on up? Okay, and next I have Juliana Chow. All right, Chanel Castaneda. Okay, and Dominic Avithia. Okay, and Christopher Mendez Joy, are you here this evening? Yeah, round of applause. Bennett O. And yes, thank you. And Natalie Ortiz Arriaga. No, okay.
Thank you. Coronado, would you like to come up at this time? Thank you.
I'm Brian Griggs from Coronado, and this is Miss Gachapin, and we're looking for Vivian Lamb. Are you here? I don't think Vivian came in, but we can still applaud Vivian. and we'll make sure to recognize her tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. HTA, Mrs. Bacon.
I'm Karen Bacon, the principal of Higley Traditional Academy, and this is Lorian Sider Brady, our fabulous teacher. And we're here tonight to recognize two kids, Takara Ishibashi. Jordan Shia.
Okay, Centennial, Miss Broadley. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Broadley. I'm the principal at Centennial. Over here we have Miss Miriam Mendez, who's our ELL coordinator for our school. We would like to recognize Miss Victoria Bonito Gerard.
Thank you. Santan, Dr. Mercado.
Thank you. No speech? I'd like to recognize Alice Zhang. Is An Nguyen here? Ania Carranza, and it's her birthday, I heard. And Isaac von Neumann.
Thank you. Sossaman Middle School, Mr. Dolan. Mr. Keeling. Okay. Sossaman Middle School students present. Raise your hand, Sossaman Middle School. Okay. Two students from Sossaman Middle School we'd like to recognize, Eduardo Bonilla and Devereaux Roberts. Okay, thank you, Dr. Thomason, Governing Board Reese. This ends our presentation. Would you all like to come over and take a picture with us? Oh, Cortina, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry. Last but not least, I'm sorry. Busy agenda.
Okay, I was patient over there, for the record. Santiago Rodriguez, I did not see come in, but we do want to thank him.
Thank you, Dr. Thomason, President Reese, members of the board.
And tonight we also start our Points of Pride program. So for the governing board president, members of the board, and the rest of our community, I would like to bring forward the first school, Higley Traditional Academy, Principal Karen Bacon and Assistant Principal Melissa Garland.
So we are so excited to recognize some special people on our campus that really make an impact each and every day that they are present with us. And I think we'd first like to start with our student. We have a fabulous student here that we'd love to share a little bit about her with you.
Our selection for the Point of Pride this year is a 6th grader. Her name is Annie Cow. Come on up, Annie. So Annie comes to school as you see her right now with a smile on her face every day. She is a joy to have in the classroom, and she is very helpful to other students, and she works very hard, and her grades and her test scores show it each and every day, and we're so proud to have her part of HTA. Thank you.
Next, we'd like to recognize our teacher, Kathy Hargis. Can you come on up? So Kathy came to us last year. She teaches resource for us. So she's part of our special education department. But she is so integrated into each and every classroom. Her day, like, I think she should have rollerblades because she's about that campus so many times per day that I can't even keep track of where she is. She is probably one of the kindest, most compassionate people I have ever met in my entire life. She truly cares about students, staff, faculty, everybody that she comes in contact with is important to her. And you really feel like you're very special when you're in her presence. So I thank her for being with us. And I told her I wouldn't embarrass her too much, so I'm going to stop. But I'm just so happy you're with us.
So our classified staff member that we want to recognize was unable to be here this evening. Her name is Leanna Lopez. She has been with us almost 4 years, and she is part of our custodial staff. And she, if I could think of 2 words to describe her, it would be kind and compassionate. She is so helpful. She will do anything you ask with a smile on her face, and the kids love her. They go up to her and talk to her, give her hugs, and she cares about them each and every day, which is truly a gift, I think, for anybody working in school, but she does it and not thinking anything of it. It just comes completely natural to her.
And the parent or volunteer that we would like to recognize is Tara Fitzgerald. Would you come on up? So Tara is a member of our PTO board. She's our treasurer this year. She's very good with money. And she's new to our PTO, but we do have 2 of her fabulous kids at our school, and we enjoy them. They're wonderful, and we get to see her face a lot more because now her youngest is in kindergarten, and so she's selfless, giving of herself, dedicated, lots of great communication. They're planning some very big events that support our students and our school and our mission and vision every single day. So we thank you for being a part of our HTA PTO.
together, team.
I have a joke. It took me hard to find one. So for upcoming events, I want to remind the public and the board that next Tuesday we do have our Talk Saves Lives event hosted at the Higley Center for Performing Arts, and that starts at 6:30 p.m. Followed by our first holiday of the year, which would be Monday, September 4th, would be Labor Day, and then our next board meeting would be Wednesday, September 6th, with the work study at 5:30 and the governing board meeting at 6:30. And then our last board meeting of the month would be on Wednesday, September 20th, with the work study at 5:30 and the board meeting at 6:30. So that would be it for our upcoming events.
Thank you. And on to board comments. There's been a lot going on with the beginning of school, and I want to thank Higley High School for inviting us to meet their football team. That was a lot of fun. We did the same at Williamsfield. And I attended the AP dual enrollment presentation last night at Higley High School, and the curriculum nights, and lots of them at the beginning of the year. So lots going on, and I appreciate the list of events we get that Mrs. Reese puts together. They're quite long, but thank you. Any other board comments?
President Reese, I have a comment. I was fortunate enough last week to have a tour of Williamsfield High School. As some of you might remember, Mr. Witovich, Mrs. Kaler, and I had a tour, and gosh, I don't even remember when it was, but I'm happy to say that with Dr. Mallerwine, he was able to show me around, and I got to spend some time with Principal Tannenbaum. Things have really changed there in a short amount of time. There's a different vibe and energy there. The new addition is awesome. So the improvements that were made just construction-wise there are great, but just I feel like it's different in there. I don't know how to put my finger on it, but the energy has improved there. And I just wanted to thank Dr. Mallerwine for taking the time and just putting his blood, sweat, and tears into that place, because it's noticeable. So thank you.
President Reese, members of the board, I would have to echo Board Member Ford's comments. There is a huge sense of community from the teachers and the staff at Williamsfield High School that I am so proud of, the change and the difference it's made in just 1 year. So kudos to our Williamsfield staff and teaching team.
I agree. Also, on Friday night with their home football game, I had many teachers come up and let me know the feel on Williamsfield and their campus and how great it is. So exactly what you're saying, they're all feeling it, and that's really great to hear. And speaking of the football game, we had the opportunity to honor our first responders, and I believe Higley is doing the same, and they're going to have a radio station out there. This is going to be their home football game Friday night, so they'll be recognizing first responders as well.
President Reese?
Mrs. Kaler.
I just want to make a comment to that, too. I attended the Higley football scrimmage along with you, and I was just so impressed. And then I told Ms. Diab-Scott the same thing, that the head coach named each varsity player by memory, first and last name, all the way down, and that was impressive to me. Obviously, he's been with the kids for many years, but still, it was cool to see. Dr. T and I attended a Expect More AZ luncheon with tons of business partners and educators from across the state. It was eye-opening, and we did eat salad, for sure. It's an inside joke. But anyways, they are putting together statewide goals for education, and it's amazing. And if you get your hands on that data, it's very fascinating to look at where we're at and where they want to be. And I was just very impressed with everybody that I met that day and talked to about education. Something else that I've talked with Dr. T about, I'm just thankful for, again, Ms. Corey, getting some of these classes on our calendar. And I know that as a board and as a superintendent, we encourage all of our schools for these Be Kind crew to come visit. And I know there's one school here that's talking about getting Rachel's Challenge, or they're doing beautiful, encouraging announcements every morning to our students, which is just so encouraging to hear. Our sixth graders over at Cortina are going to make kindness rocks and put them out in the neighborhood. And there's just a lot of great things that are happening in our schools that we don't hear about on a daily basis. And I just want our community to know that we're thankful as a board up here. I'm sure that these things are happening in our schools and we fully support them. I wish we had all the money in the world to provide bigger programs that they're asking for. We can't always do that, but I love the kind touches that are going on out there. And I think that was it. Okay, that's enough.
All right, thank you. Any other board comments? Okay. We will go on to 6.0, request to speak to the governing board. We value input from our constituents. This time has been set aside for anyone from the audience who wishes to address the board. Please remember, this is not an appropriate venue to evaluate, discuss, or criticize district personnel. Policy KEB provides a process for complaints about personnel. Speakers should be aware that false statements about individuals may result in civil liability. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. We ask that you please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. I have a request to speak from Dawn Anderson.
Good evening, Dr. Thomason, administrative leaders on the HUSD board, President Reese. Thank you for your time and allowing me to share my thoughts with you regarding the calendar committee decision. I've spent the last 12 years working for Higley Unified School District, and I also have a daughter who is a senior at Higley High. I served as the social studies department chair at Higley High School and the boys' head tennis coach. Additionally, I served on the calendar committee that initially proposed our modified year-round calendar. I'm surprised that we are having a new vote on changes to the calendar or considering it so soon. When I was on the committee, we researched the modified year-round calendar extensively and found over and over again that students are happier and progress faster when attending school more regularly than a traditional calendar. We also found that the modified year-round calendar was deeply popular in Chandler and Queen Creek, which had adopted a similar calendar due to its benefits. To my knowledge, those points have not changed. Speaking for myself as well as for my social studies department, allow me to encourage the board to continue the modified year-round calendar, or known as option 1. Every teacher in my department supports it because we have lived the benefits firsthand. Students are retaining more over the summer, coming back more ready to learn, and have been performing better in classes. Additionally, teachers are more refreshed by the longer breaks, and all teachers I have conversed with at Higley High and other parts of the district are less discouraged and less prone to burnout. The board recently adopted a strategic plan that seeks to work on increasing student and staff retention. I believe option 1 will help the district better serve that goal. Let's not lose quality students, parents, and staff to our neighboring districts who have already committed to a progressive, research-based calendar that puts students first. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other requests to speak? All right. Then we will go on to our consent agenda, 7.0. I move that we approve the consent agenda items 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, 7.5, 7.6, 7.7, 7.8, 7.9, 7.10, 7.11, 7.12, 7.13, 7.14, and 7.15.
Second.
right. I do have a question, and I hope someone can help. I apologize for not sending this earlier. On 7.15 for the overnight student travel, can I get clarification on the Higley High School wrestling tournaments? I see that there are 4 tournaments, and when I was reviewing the request, it is a lot of, there's several missed school days, especially around finals. And is this, if they qualify, are they registering for these tournaments? Do we know? And I'm sorry, I meant to send it to Dr. Fowler and didn't have that opportunity.
President Reese, members of the board, at this time I do not have that information, but I will definitely get that information to you at this time if that is something you would like to pull at this time, because the trips, except for the September trip, are in the future. We can, actually all of the trips are in the future. We can bring that another time if you feel more comfortable with that.
Well, I know the DECA one is September 7th through the 9th, and that's DECA. I was just seeing the wrestling team December 1st and 2nd, December 14th and through the 16th, January 5th through the 6th, and January 19th and the 20th. Those all include school days that they would miss, and where I'm primarily concerned is around that 14th through 16th time, as well as the 5th and 6th returning from when we're returning from break. So,
Good points.
so I was just wondering if these are, if they qualify, excuse me, because I know that we have been seeing more of the out-of-state or overnight travel for our sports teams to approve that if they qualify for different levels that they already have approval to be traveling. So I just didn't know if these were sign-up tournaments that they just want to do these, or
President Reese, I do know that that is at the start of the wrestling season, or kind of in the middle. Wrestling season does end after January, and so most of these tournaments could be invitational matches. I will find that information out for you and get back with you on that.
Okay. Then with that, I would like to amend my motion to remove item 7.15 B, C, D, and E. Mrs. Ford, do you second that?
I will second that. I was just about to do it, sorry.
No, that's okay. So any questions about removing those? So we'll vote to remove those items for the amendment.
So could you refresh my memory why you want these removed?
What I just explained was these are all the Higley High School wrestling team, and these are missing a lot of school days, especially around the end of the semester. So I'm asking if these are sign-up tournaments, or are they if we make it to that tournament? Because if it's a qualifier for their championships that they have to qualify for these tournaments and they're just asking for prior approval, or is it ones that they're signing up for? That's a lot of travel, missing school for high school kids from December to January around our winter break finals.
I assume that the athletic director at the school had a conversation with the coach and the principal about this, and that's why they brought this forward in this manner. I would assume that if somebody could answer that question.
Mr. Witovich, because it's so far in advance, I think we're just tabling it to get more information. I think that's just what she's asking,
Okay.
just to make sure.
That's what I just asked.
That's fine then on the table and then.
Right, it's just removing it from this particular agenda.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor for removing those items? So they're all AIA invitationals? Okay.
So also the athletic directors had a conversation about this and addressed the concerns in reference. Okay, so they've had a concern regarding the homework and things like that.
Okay, well, I was asking a question. All right, so then I will, now that we have clarification, thank you. We'll strike my
We'll re-amend?
amendment, and we will stick with the original covering 7.15 A, B, C, D, and E.
Okay.
Second.
Yep.
Sorry, Mrs. Reach. All right, any other questions on the consent agenda?
I guess I just do have a little bit of a comment. There was, I did hear from somebody in the community that we as the board don't approve this field trip, but we approve that field trip, and it was kind of a, I don't know, I think there's a little bit miscommunication out there, because I agree with you, Mr. Witovich, that by the time field trips get to the board, they've gone through parent boosters talking about, you know, what events the children are in that group are going to attend. It goes through a principal, it goes through a admin, a super, and then it comes to us. So I do believe that the proper steps are taken prior to a field trip getting to us. And so just for my own personal, I would feel really bad saying no to a field trip that came to me after it went through all those steps. So just so that the public knows that it goes through many steps before it comes to the board.
There is a process to it, yes. And sometimes they're looking at these individually and not looking at them collectively, and it was the collective that I was concerned about, as well as the dates with for high school finals and stuff. So, and I do apologize. That's something I would have typically gotten to Dr. Fowler ahead of time, and my time just hadn't allowed that. So, all right, any other questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. All right, we don't have any old business. And so we are on the action information items. 9.1, information and discussion with the monthly financial reports. Does anyone have questions? Mr. Holland, you have a joke? You said you would always come prepared with a joke.
How about I start with the answer to the question first? So, President Reese, members of the board, in this board packet, you'll notice you have 2 finance reports, and you will have that for 3 months. You'll notice that one of them is labeled 16, 17, 13th month closeout, because we have not officially closed out last school year or last fiscal year. So I wanted you to see where we were or where we are with our balances in all of our different funds. And at the same time, you'll notice in the 18 report, there is no budget or beginning balances, because we do not roll balances until the end of September, October 1st, right? So with the 13th month, you can see what our ending balances are, and then you can also see what our new expenditures are for this fiscal year so far, so that you have a comfort level to know that we do have the funds. I'm not just giving you a whole bunch of blank boxes. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions?
It can get confusing when we haven't closed out one year, but we've had to start another, and they're different funds.
There's a lot of work, yes.
Thank you for all your work.
Mr. Holland, I just want to say thank you for Ms. Collis back.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
So should I give you my joke now?
Yes.
We're anxiously waiting.
Okay. So I have to thank my assistant Dina for this. She worked for quite a bit of time trying to find one. a decent one. So what is the difference between an in-law and an outlaw?
Right.
One is wanted.
That's a good one. Very nice.
I don't think my mother-in-law watched.
All right, for 9.2 then, for strategic plan goals 3 and 4.
President Reese, members of the board, last board meeting we went over the goal 1 and goal 2. We share with you the strategies and actions that were developed by the committee on June 20th. Tonight we're going to go over goals 3 and 4. So we're going to start with Dr. Malawine, who's going to go over goal 3, and then that'll be followed by Mr. Holland, who will go over goal 4.
Members of the board, or excuse me, President Reese, members of the board, Dr. Thomason, cabinet, thank you. I was saddled with goal 3, which is communication. So communication is a tough one because that seems to be everybody's excuse when they don't show up when they're supposed to be there or do what they're supposed to do. So I'll do the best I can with this one. I was excited that I didn't have to follow Gary because I know I can't live up to the joke, and then I had to follow the joke. So thanks, Gary. I appreciate that. So we gathered on the same day as everyone else, and I had a good team, and we went through each objective and created an action step and kind of a tentative timeline, and came up with a way that we hopefully will check all the boxes on our communication, but also building stronger community relations. So 3.1 would be we want to execute a comprehensive district communication plan. And what we want that plan to do is to, our action steps would be, we want to address all stakeholders. We want to make sure every stakeholder, we have a plan to communicate to every stakeholder. What we're going to do to look at that with the metrics is we're going to use the survey, and we've been talking very extensively about not over-surveying our community to death. So what we're trying to do is create a comprehensive survey that can kind of check off all 4 of the strategic goals at one time, and the communication piece will be embedded into that survey as well. I'll be working closely with Dr. Kirikos to make sure that is embedded in there. And so with involved with that, we will be creating a communication committee. Michelle Reese is kind of heading up the assembling of that committee. We're trying to make sure that all stakeholders are represented with that committee. All parts of our district are represented in that committee, from our high school to our middle schools to our elementaries, our northern side of our district, our southern part of our district, and then all stakeholders. So that's something that's in the works, and we're going to be bringing that committee together very shortly. Any questions on 3.1?
What are this, I don't know how to word it. What stakeholders will this consist of? Like, what does that mean? What does that look like?
It would look like employees, so it'll look like our staff, it'll look like our students, it'll look like our parents, and it'll look like our community. One piece that we talked about a lot when we talked about this strategic plan goal 3 is how to communicate to the piece of our community that doesn't have kids in our schools, because our parents are a captive audience a lot of the times, but we have a large amount of our community that don't put kids in our schools, but they need to know what we're doing. They need to know the value that Higley brings to South Gilbert and the northern part of Queen Creek, and that they would be included with those stakeholders.
Okay, so I guess I'm just wondering what's the plan to get someone or more than one of those people involved on the committee?
That's what our committee is going to come up with. That's a good question. I mean, we brainstormed a number of people. We've solicited some volunteers, and once the committee is formed, I'll share that with you. But we have some ideas that we're working on to involve our Trilogy Committee and our veterans that work in the Trilogy Committee, and the Trilogy community. that live there. So we're working on that, but I don't really have a silver bullet on that one, to be honest with you. One of the big conversations are we're going out for another M&O override. We're going out for another bond in a few years. We need to let everybody that lives in our community know the value we are bringing to this community, and so that's where that conversation came from. But when I think of that, I think of either young parents that don't have kids in school yet, and also, or I think of the retired people that live in our southern part of our community, and that's something that we'll work together to figure out how to really build relationships with them, much more than just communicate with them.
Okay.
Dr. Melham, who's on your committee?
We don't have it finalized yet. I'm on it.
Okay.
Michelle Reese is on it. Steve Tannenbaum's on it, and then I can't from memory remember the other names, but if somebody was very passionate about being on it, we're not going to turn somebody away. We're going to try and, we're going to try and have as many diverse people on that committee as possible, because that's how we're going to get the best diversity and ideas and different ways to communicate. I mean, I'm not a marketing expert by no means, so I'm just going to be one member of that team. I wasn't a communication major. I'm just going to be one person on that team, but we want to get a wide diversity of people, and we're not turning away volunteers for sure.
In reference to the plan we have in front of us, the goal is the metric is that the outcomes? Where's
The metrics are the
outcomes?
things we're going to look at to measure our successes.
That's the
or
metric.
if we reach our goals.
So this is going to be the outcomes, the metrics.
That'll be one of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, for example, a survey. A survey can be used in a couple ways. One way it will be used is to discover a need. Like, what is the need? Where are we not communicating, or how are people receiving our communications? And then the second piece of the metric will be when we set that goal, is that goal being met? So it's going to look like it could look different depending on what we need from it. Does that make sense?
If I could just interject there. The other thing to remember is this is a 4-year plan. So from that communications plan, there will be goals that arise from that for the following years. Out of that process is going to give us direction on where we need to go with our communications, what groups we need to communicate better with, how we do that. Also, part of it was looking at hiring a marketing company to help with those. So that'll be part of that. As this evolves, there'll be more details and what this will be.
Dr. Thomason, as we go through, we spent a great deal of money on the strategic plan. And as we had a presentation at the last board meeting, as this board meeting, my concern is in reference to we're not going outside our box in reference to this. It seems to be the committee consists of everybody local here. And as I look at things, and I mentioned it earlier this morning when we had our work study session in reference to the instructional designers, I wish if you could look at that and see we're an instructional designer. You know, you guys are doing a great job, but we need somebody professionally to come on board to look at our communications program, to look at the program we looked at last week, to oversee it, to make sure we're bringing everything together in a timely manner and from an outside view. Because last week we talked about, the principals getting together. I'd rather have somebody from the outside looking at this, because if we just keep talking amongst our family, and we have spent a great deal of money on this strategic plan, and I'd really like to have us take a look, because some of the things, even in reference to the strategic, these instructional designers, ASU is updating their admissions and their communications department. Well, instead of amongst themselves working on this, they're bringing an instructional designer. They have an application online for somebody to come and work through them to show them all the things that we're looking for. So that's where if we could take a look at that would be a great opportunity, because one of the things in communication, it's our employees. And it shows, statistics show that when you promote something, if you just promote it on our website, 15% of the people take it at its word. If an employee speaks in behalf of us, that's like 75% they look at it. So those are some of the different things that we need to look at, the information that's out there. And please, I think we need to, because I want to make sure we have everything there when we're going to walk us through this plan. I just think it's important.
President Reese, members of the board, we definitely will take a look at some different instructional design opportunities that are out there, and with the communications program that's out there too. But I do believe that we are in the very infant stages of putting these plans together and getting more people involved. Overall, with the committees, we have had well over 100 employees, and community members involved. So we do have quite a few people outside of our district that are involved with this communication plan also. But we will continue to take a look at opportunities to bring in professionals and take a look at the options that we have available.
Thank you.
Mr. Wojtovich, you seem to always be providing me a segue, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
We're a good team here. Good tag team.
I appreciate that. So 3.2 is to execute a strategic district marketing plan, and we have gone outside and hired in a marketing firm, and I was lucky enough to sit in on those meetings, and because we were really working on Williamsfield when we really brought them in, but we're going to continue to piggyback on that relationship, and there was a lot of things that I learned on how we can communicate better and how people are receiving communication. So I think that's a good suggestion. I think we kind of stumbled upon it because we knew we had a need, but now we see the value in it. I'm pretty sure we're going there. We've had quite a few conversations about what that looks
And
like.
I think when they did a presentation on our strategic plan, they talked about the gray tide. And the gray tide is the people that are the senior members of our community, maybe Trilogy, that we need to address differently and educate them about our different things that are happening. So that's just a great thing in reference to our communications. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So to execute that, what we're going to look at is each of our stakeholder groups would want to identify their strengths, and then what makes for example, what makes each site, what's the strength of each site? If we look at Coronado, we know it has a Mandarin immersion program. We look at our biotech, our engineering programs, or we look at Ray's school in Santana and their Spanish immersion. We want each of our schools to identify what make them unique, and we want to market each of our schools for their uniqueness. Because we're in a situation where there's choices for families, and I think we are the best choice. Our problem is we're not communicating it, we're not marketing it at the rate that they are. And when Dr. Thomas and I met with Rain, and we found out the budget of some of our competitors, it blew us away. Like, we don't have that budget, but we can market smarter, and we can market with a strategy. And that's what 3.2 will do. It'll be to execute that plan once it's developed, and we will be working with an outside group to help us develop that plan. And I do think we've seen some benefits in that plan, not to get too off, but we know Williamsfield's enrollment is up. And we would have never said that when we ended the year, but I think we did a good job as a team pulling together and really showing that school off for what it has to offer. And so we're going to continue that and piggyback on that. And that's what 3.2 is really all about. And we'll again measure that on enrollment and things as we move forward in the future. 3.3 will be to ensure consistent, transparent communication and dialogue with all stakeholders. That was something that we went back and forth on a lot. We're gonna continue to work with our websites, our constant contact, having those one-on-one conversations at our sites when we have our school nights and things like that. We need to dial that in a little more and make sure that we have communication protocols. For example, what are the important things that we need to highlight, and are all schools doing that at the same time? And more of a comprehensive way of doing things, opposed to we have one school that does it really well and we have one school that struggles at that. I know as a principal at Cooley, that was something I struggled at because I was new to that. So I had to really lean on Miss Diab. Hey, what are you doing? And I actually would follow their constant contacts, and I'd call my person and say, hey, make sure we get this out, because I was bad at that. But I think what we're going to do is our team will create protocols so all our schools are doing similar things and we're all doing it in a better, more effective way. And that's 3.3. 3.4 is build and foster relationships with the broader community to keep supporting education in our district. And we touched on that a little bit. A lot of what goes on with this Plan 3 overlaps. And that's reaching out to our Trilogy community, reaching out to our new and upcoming parents. Like, how are we communicating to families that have 1 and 2 and 3-year-olds? We have our early childhood, but that's still before they get there. So how are we communicating that? What are we doing to reach out to those people and build a plan for their future to bring our kids to our district? And that will also come into play when we do go out for our overrides. That communication will come back. They'll know the value that we bring. They'll know the value that we bring that basically the charter schools can't. All the programs, all the dual enrollment, all the AP. We need to get that out to that community as well, those stakeholders as well. So this one is about not only the people that have kids that go here, that work here, the people that are involved with our district, but the people that live in our community that aren't involved in our district. We got to create a plan to communicate to them, and that's what 3.4 is about.
Dr. Mellon, that's very important because, like you said, in reference to a bond, it's not just send the information a week before the bond comes out. We need to establish a relationship with these people in the community because these are our voters. So it's very important to make sure we get that information out and to be creative. It's interesting to watch some of the school districts in reference to money for promoting. A lot of school districts are using sponsorship, of the newsletters that go out. But that's a very important one of our goals in reference to this communication with the community. So I appreciate that that's looking into that.
Thank you. 3.5 would be our last one because we kind of omitted 3.6 because it really fell right into 3.1. But 3.5 is something that we talked very specifically about is establishing business partnerships to enhance student learning, not to just sponsor a breakfast, not to just bring donuts for our teachers. I mean, sure, that's great, makes everybody feel good, but what are the businesses in our community doing to enhance our learning? And I think we want to connect with them for our CTE classes. We want to connect with them. Dr. Thomason and I have already started with the Lunch and Learn program that's going to bring some in and connect to enhance awareness, enhance learning, enhance involvement, not just shake hands and, hey, thank you for your money, but how are you going to help our kids? What specifically is being done to increase learning? And that's what 3.5 is going to be about. I wish I could get more into specifics with you, but that's what the committee is going to be for. I mean, we got all kinds of ideas. We're trying to stay outside the box and do new things. But I think when we get a diverse committee together, we're going to have a diverse group that's all going to have different ideas, and that's where really the sweet spot's going to be on getting this part of our strategic plan rolling and effective over time. And I appreciate Dr. Schillenberg jumping on and reminding me it's a 4-year plan because it gets a little overwhelming when you think about what are we doing in the now. But I really just keep trying to tell myself we'll get the committee together and we'll do some good things when it happens. But the marketing that we've already started is a nice jump start to where we got to be. And I really think we're seeing success at Williamsfield from it. I mean, just the fact that enrollment is up. I mean, ALA opened and enrollment is up. And I think that's a testament to our programs, our district, but also we got the information out there finally and people are hearing about it. So what's also nice is we got a lot of people now that are aware, oh, hey, we're marketing, and they're bringing in things when they look, like I bring the Mesa stuff in, I bring the Chandler stuff in because I get them both from where I live. And so we're looking and seeing what are they doing as well and how can we make it better. And Michelle Reese has been great. Her and I kind of really have spearheaded this. So we're kind of going to assemble the group and then hopefully we're going to get some fabulous ideas. So any more questions on communication?
I just one Dr. Miller one, and it's small and it's probably more for Dr. Thomason too, but I just had the opportunity to get trained in School Messenger. I've known about it for years, we all have, but yesterday, and it does so much more than I ever thought it could do. Like it'll tell you how many phone calls went out, how many emails, who opened the emails, how long kind of they looked at or listened to a phone call. It's pretty interesting. So I know I could just talk to him about it maybe another time, but I was impressed with how much more it could do and how much you could learn about how things are communicated in School Messenger. So that's all.
Yeah, I mean, that piggybacks on top of that remarketing that's been going on, that like when you click on one thing, it reminds you on the website. We have been doing that. We have so many amazing things going on that those kinds of things are just going to get more information, because really what's going to bring kids in is when their neighbors tell each other how great it is here. So everybody's important as well as the whole state. I think that's a great idea. Thank you. Any more questions? That concludes my me for the evening. Gary, you're up. I know you're going to tell a great joke. And you only have one? Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mellowine.
Thank you for all your work on that.
President Reese, members of the board, I also wanted to comment. I forgot to share that these last two say draft on them because as part of our communications, I am going out to all the schools and sharing the plan and the details with the teachers, helping them be aware of it, understand the next steps. I had to start it earlier to make sure I could get them done sooner than later. So draft was put on it so that they knew that the board still hadn't had the final look at it, but I could still share it with them. So that's what that's for. So I wanted to explain that. And now Mr. Holland.
President Reese, members of the board, this evening I have goal 4 of our strategic plan, which deals with finance and operations. So for this particular goal, we have 5 objectives. Our first objective was to maintain fiscal responsibility and stewardship. With that, we have 2 action steps. The first one would be to establish budgets for our sites and our departments, and clearly communicate and train our staff and make sure that they understand their budgets, they know how to monitor their budgets, they know how to read their budgets. The metric we would be using for that, of course, is to have the budgets ready for our departments and our sites. To the staff survey on the effective, we'll be sending out a survey. The survey will be on the effectiveness of the training, budget training that we are doing. Plus, we have quarterly budget meetings with all of our sites and departments to go over their budgets. We provide them a budget report every month, and then we meet once a quarter to go over all of those. If they have specific questions, they can always have a meeting sooner. The next action step would be to change the structure of our warehouse to be more of a distribution center. The plan and intent for that is for cost savings, so we're able to buy more in bulk. With that, we would be working and implementing that distribution center the fall of 2017, so right now. So we've already started that process. Again, the metric for that would be to compare our previous spending from the previous year to what we're saving buying in bulk and trying to go that process. The second objective is to identify and seek additional revenue sources. So there we have 3 action steps. The first one is to increase tax credit contributions through improved communications with our community. Again, that would be timeline is now, fall 2017. The metric to measure that would be to compare our tax credit revenue from year to year. The next action step is to seek additional grant funds and additional funds from the State Facilities Board.
Mr. Holland?
Yes, ma'am.
Quick question before you go to the next. Who's our public relations coordinator? And sorry if I don't know that, but that says it's the responsible person.
That is,
President Reese, members of the board, that would be Michelle Reese.
Okay, I didn't know that that was her title. Sorry about that. I just was confused. Thank you.
yes, ma'am. So the next one is to seek additional grant funds, also to look for additional funding from the State Facilities Board. The State Facilities Board is one we have already been putting in proposals to them, and we have been very fortunate that they have been funding some of our projects. Of course, we will continue to submit those proposals and ask for as much funding as we can get. That is an ongoing, we have it down as fall of 18. The piece of that really is about looking at additional grant funds that we may be able to find. So we'll be working on that more of next year, but I wanted to clarify and make sure that you knew the SFB one we're already actively pursuing now. The metric for that would be to compare our grant revenues and the funds that we receive from the SFB from year to year. The next action step is to increase student enrollment through our district marketing plan. The timeline for that is projected for spring of 2018. The metric for that would be annual enrollment data that we would compare. The third objective is to ensure district schools are secure, safe, secure, and well maintained. In that category, we have 2 action steps. Both are very similar. One would be, they're both to conduct an annual audit at each site. One would be for safety and security, and one would be for facility maintenance and custodial needs. Both of those are scheduled for September, or spring of 2018. The metric for that would be the completion of the annual audit. The fourth objective is to ensure that the district policies and procedures are accessible, implemented consistently, and reviewed regularly. Our first action step for that would be to purchase board doc software, which is something that we are already looking into as, now, so fall of 17. The metric would be, of course, board doc software purchased and being used by the district. And that would be something that Ms. Reach would use, but then it would be accessible for everybody. The next action step is an annual training that cabinet would determine who needs to identify which groups of people need training that specific year. We want to make sure that everybody understands the policies, everybody is make sure if they have any questions or and that they're being implemented completely, accurately, and being followed. So consistently, yes. Again, we're looking at fall of 2018 for that. And the metric we'd be using there would be the sign-in sheets, the documentation to support the trainings and show who has attended and who has not. So we can make sure that everybody participates. The fifth objective was to develop a technology plan that includes integration throughout the district. The action step would be to form a technology committee to write an updated technology plan that includes integration of technology throughout our district. That is something that we have been currently working on, and we're looking at that to be around spring of 2018. The metric for that, of course, would be the completion of the technology plan.
Mr. Holland, why does that say completed? Spring 2018, but yet completed? What does that mean?
We would have the plan, the committee would be working, we would have the plan finished by spring of 2018 so that we can look at implementation.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I think it was just to emphasize that the plan would be completed, it would be, the implementation would take place for the following year.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's been working hard on these strategic plan goals. We know it takes a lot of time and effort, so we appreciate everyone doing that. We're going to go to 9.3, which is an information item and a discussion regarding board meeting and work study dates for 2018. This is something we talked about in the spring, potentially moving our board meetings to essentially one board meeting a month and one work study a month. We talked about it in our retreat early on in the spring, and we wanted to kind of bring that back and have a discussion on what we would like as a board for our board meetings to look like. We find ourselves trying to rush through work study. Of course, not tonight, that we were able to, right? We were able to end a little bit early, but usually we don't have enough time to get the information, to ask questions, and due to open meeting law, we're restricted on when we can talk as a board. And work study allows us to have the discussions and ask questions together as a board, not to poll or make any decisions or vote. But then those items that are talked about in our work study can be brought back to the next board meeting, and hopefully that we have a good understanding of what we're being asked of, and we have an opportunity to digest and think of questions and just have discussion ahead of time instead of trying to have a work study and coming out and making a decision. So I just wanted to open it up for discussion. This allows us to, it is an information item for discussion on that.
President Reese, thank you for having this on here, actually, because I have found it frustrating. I mean, I understand the obvious reasons for the open meeting law, but just from my perspective and sitting up here, it is such a roadblock to communication and getting things done. And for those of you that know me, I just like to get it done. It's frustrating that things are slow, and it's a slow process, and we have to wait till we're together and have it on an agenda, and it's frustrating. So I think what moving to this one work study a month and one board meeting a month can do is help improve our communication and getting more information so that we feel more comfortable when we're at our board meetings voting on things, because quite often sometimes I'm up here and I don't feel like I have all the information on what I'm voting on, and I think that this structure would help that. So that's just my 2 cents.
And I know for me, sometimes walking out of here like,
yeah,
you know, so.
And it's not because I don't have all the information because I don't want to, but maybe we're not permitted to discuss it, or we didn't have enough time to get to it, or, you know, something like that. So I think this would help in that area.
Mr. Glover?
Thanks. I agree. I'm certainly willing to give it a try. The only thing I think that maybe we should consider, and this is maybe it's me, but we sometimes get information on Friday over the weekend, and I feel terrible bombarding you on Monday morning. I know it's part of what we do, but if we move to this once a month, perhaps maybe we could consider, instead of Friday before the Wednesday meeting, maybe we could move some sort of agenda, maybe give us a couple more extra days to ponder what's on the agenda, so that we're not all eating up your Mondays and your Tuesdays. Does that make sense?
President Reese, members of the board, I would love nothing more than to give you at least a week to be able to look at the board agenda before it comes about. I would tell you that in practicality, sometimes it's not always going to happen, but that would be a major goal and a step in the right direction.
And part of the discussion for this is that we, on our work study nights, that we would have potentially a small consent agenda item. We do have personnel items that need to be addressed, and if it allows us to have time-sensitive items that come to us to be put forth, and we would do the meeting with the consent agenda prior to the work study. So we would vote on our consent agenda, adjourn our meeting, and go into our work study. That way we are tending to all of our business that we need to, HR information and vouchers and things like that. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Wojtovich, you usually have to take vacation time to leave work early to get here to our work studies on time, correct? And that was something else that we talked about, was that potentially adjusting the time a little bit, because we won't have to be in work study and then come into our board meetings, that on our work studies we can start our meeting at 6:30, and I believe that works better for your work schedule. And we can start our meeting at 6:30 like we do now. We would do our consent agenda items, and then we would go into work study, and then be there as long as we need to cover the items that we need to. And then on the board meeting nights, because obviously if we change to one work study, one board meeting, we do a lot of recognitions. So that is going to push more recognitions to one night, that we could start our recognitions and awards at 6 o'clock, and then once we finish those, then go into our board meeting. So our board meeting would be scheduled to start at 6:30, but if our awards went longer than that, our meeting would just start following the awards. It might make it a little easier. If you couldn't take vacation time to get here on time and you arrived at 6:15 and could still participate in some of the awards, I think that would alleviate some time constraints for you as well, Mr. Wojtovich. So that was just some suggestions and ideas that were being thought of.
President, I'll be very quick, sorry. It says on here, on this proposal, 5:30 and 6 on there.
Is that what
But
it
you said
says?
6 and 6:30, it doesn't matter to me, but if we have to vote
It was,
or something.
I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Yeah, and we could look at that, because we really try to keep our board meeting start times consistent, and if we change it to 6 and we're doing 5:30 and then 6 o'clock, so you can make it in time for the board meeting and not have to use vacation time from your job all the time. So it was just an information item to discuss, and we can choose on how we want to proceed. But I know we talked about it in the spring, so it's...
What would be the next steps, President Reese, from here for deciding this?
If I remember correctly, Ms. Good, we can just choose as a board. Is that correct, or do we need to do a formal vote on our meeting times?
No,
Changing to the work study.
Even though it's identified as an information discussion item. You could make that vote tonight,
Okay.
because you're allowed to make decisions on anything that's related to what is on the agenda.
Okay, because
If you care to make a motion on doing that, you may do that tonight.
when we changed our dates before, it was just something that we decided we didn't necessarily do a formal vote, but I get we're changing our format, not just the days.
Would it be okay in references perhaps at the next board meeting, because some of the things that have been brought up today, I'd just like to think through some of the things. And the other thing I think we need to think about is if we have one board meeting a month, we might be sitting here till 11 o'clock at night. And, you know, I don't know about you, but my attention span after a certain time.
Your bedtime?
And also, yes, and also in consideration of the Higley employees that are here, administration's here, and to have them one board meeting a month, and we stay here till 11 o'clock at night. So just I want to think things through a little bit. There's a lot of things in play, and like you said, the awards, that could take up to an hour, hour and a half, and we need to really take a look at some of this, and I want to think about this first. Okay.
And that was a thought and an idea and what had been talked through, not with us, but our thought process on that was that it is possible. It's possible on any agenda, depends on what we have to cover. However, if we have covered the items that are going to be on the agenda in our previous work study, our board meetings should go fairly quickly, because we would have had time to discuss it. We would have had time to ask additional questions of Dr. Thomason to get those replies back. That the thought process in that is that we would be more prepared and we would have already discussed it and have more answers, that it should go fairly fast. Again, with any board packet, we could be here until 11 o'clock on any given agenda. Just depends on what's on it. So, but we did think about that because the length. But the thought process behind that was that we would be better prepared because we would have already covered the information in work study.
President Reese.
Mrs. Kaler.
Something else to think about when this whole communication and transparency piece that we've talked about in our strategic plan. Sometimes we talk about, something at our work study, and then we come in here and we vote on it right away. And so maybe I'm in favor as well to have those work studies, because it gives time too for us to get feedback from employees and parents or student, whatever that is, to kind of think about those items as well, because sometimes it's so quick up here and we don't have time to get that feedback, and we don't think about things that that are important to people that we're not listening or hearing. So I do think it's important that we get more time, however this can work out, to kind of process some of that.
And to comment on that, the other thought process was that our work studies could be held in here and our work studies would be recorded. So they would be recorded and they would be put onto our website, just the same as our board meetings. But currently, as we are today, our work studies are not recorded.
Why would we need to do that?
Well, one, it's the transparency piece. Two, it gives our community, our staff, whoever wants to watch it, more information on what the board's going to be voting on. And if they have input or concerns or any communication about it, then it gives them time to communicate to us as board members prior to us voting on it.
Right.
So our work studies today aren't recorded, and when we're talking about something, there's no time for feedback. There's no time for fact-finding or questions. So this way, if it's in here and it's recorded, then our community, our staff, if they can't make it, they can go and watch our work studies and know what's coming up before we vote on it.
That makes sense, President Reese. And, and I respect Greg wanting to think on this too, but I guess I think we can all agree, even if this isn't the solution, something has to give, something has to change so that we can have more time to process this, right? So,
and maybe it's that we spend the springtime as a pilot type of program with the mindset that let's try this for, the springtime and reevaluate after, that, if it's working or not.
And that's a good thought. The reason we talked about doing it now is because in the springtime, if we try and do this, you have some schools from recognitions. I know we had HTA here tonight, but that changes a whole lot the later we get into the school year. So it was, if this is a schedule we want to try and go to, then we can get our recognitions scheduled and our principals can know ahead of time. They can make the adjustments and know what date they're presenting and stuff, instead of changing in the spring when we're still doing those recognitions. So I understand what you're saying, but that there was a lot going on and we're a little behind the 8 ball because we really wanted to have this discussion prior to school starting, but here we are. So that was the thought of trying to do this, because it's going to be a learning process for all if we go to this, because our cabinet and staff and everyone who submits information for an agenda and work study, they're going to have to really prepare ahead of time, more than the 2 weeks that we already have.
I was going to ask Mrs. Reach how this affects her, and has this processed through your mind and how this would work? I mean, I would love to hear that kind of feedback, because I know this is going to affect not just the 5 of us up here, obviously. So that's important to me too.
And Mrs. Reach and I have discussed this, and so that's why we're like, if we're going to do it, we need to, and she can answer for you guys. It has been a discussion. So,
President Reese, members of the board, from the superintendent standpoint, as I believe that in a lot of our work studies, we have run right up until the end of the work study when we still had more questions and more things to discuss. I have no doubt that this would require more time for my staff and for the board, and but I believe it would be time that would be well spent talking about issues and agenda items that we need more information on.
President Reese.
Mr. Glover?
One thing, okay, I agree that I don't mind the work studies being transparent taped. That's fine. That's all good communication, no problem. But I think there's a difference. It's slightly less formal around a table, and I think sometimes when you stand up here, it's a tendency that it's not as free flowing, I suppose, as some of our work studies. So I'm not saying yes or no, and the board can decide, and that's fine. Or maybe sometimes we're in here, sometimes we're in there, and I don't know. But I do sort of like the somewhat more informal atmosphere.
We talked about that too. Mrs. Reach and I discussed that on different ways where we wouldn't necessarily be up here on the dais, that it would be more of an informal setting. Yeah, and we've talked about arrangements and where we would need to be for it to be recorded and things like that. And Mrs. Reach is drawn on her little papers. So that is something we have talked about, because I agree, when we're sitting there and can look at each other face to face instead of side to side, it makes that a little more comfortable. Right? So, I mean, it was something we talked about in our retreat. That's why I asked for it to come back. I'm fine if you guys want to make a motion and vote on it tonight, if we want to hold off on it, and do it on a different agenda. So I'm open.
Mr. Witovich, like 2 weeks, give you 2 weeks to kind of ponder it, and let's do next board meeting. Should we vote on it?
That'd be perfect.
Can we do that?
Yep, I agree
With that, if we
I
give
think
them
I
those 2
respect
weeks
that,
to
yes.
kind of
Okay, that's perfect.
soak it in.
Yep.
Okay.
So we'll bring that as a specific agenda item, think about it, and everything. So, all right, if we don't have any more discussion on that, then 9.4, I move that we approve administration sending a summary of board meeting action to all staff with or without conditions.
Second.
This is a follow-up to Mrs. Good's discussion at our last work study, that they're to be able to get information out to the Higley staff, just a summary of the board meetings instead of having to wait for it to come up on video. There's a lot of questions. Staff wants to know what our how things came out. So we did have that conversation and work study at our last board meeting, and asked that it come to the board for approval. So, comments?
In reference to this, who would be writing this?
I believe it was Ms. Good and Mrs. Reese together.
This is the sample.
Yes, and I guess if this is public relations, it should be coming from our public relations department. And I just think this is, if our community's seeing our staff attorney writing this, they'll understand this is kind of a frivolous expense.
It would be both.
And not a good
It'd be
perception of communication, because no offense, all due respect,
Yes.
but when you get something from an attorney, you feel like maybe you're not getting all of the information.
And this is to be positive.
It's
supposed to be
guarded,
positive
you know?
Newsletter, and I think a newsletter coming from your staff attorney, we hire our public relations people to do this, and I think this is their job. And I would be more comfortable with our public relations people doing this. In reference to this, I'm just going to give you my opinion on this. If this is coming out about the board, it needs to be a little bit more bedazzle, okay, and more fun. I think this is the Higley Board Bulletin. I think it just, like, in addition to this, if you're going to be sending something like this, perhaps, I don't know if the superintendent sends something out to the staff or the community as well, he could have something on here. Make this a little bit more fun and informative of highlights that are happening in our school district. I don't know.
But that's not the intention of this one. The intention was to get what happened at the board meeting out within 2 days so that our staff knew what happened, instead of hearing a little bit here, hearing a little bit here, and our video's not up. I get what you're saying. Like if we were to do I agree. If we were to be doing a board newsletter, absolutely, I completely agree. But the intent of this was to simply recap what the board voted on, what passed, what didn't pass. We talked about last time, it's not the minutes, it's not saying who voted how, it's just the outcomes of consent was approved, this was that.
Sure. You know, in reference to this, I'm just a little nervous on the decision, what is going to be put out. The one that was put out in July was one section about travel, and then another section about some of the other, two other agenda items, and we totally missed all the awards that took place in our, and all the things that we acknowledged, and the plus things that happened. So when whoever made that decision, like who is making that decision as far as what they think is important? Yeah, like we're missing opportunities here.
So maybe a suggestion is simply our board agenda, and that get to consent. Consent was approved 5-0. You get to, it can have that it was an information item, and then it can just simply be our actual agenda and how the outcome.
That's boring.
Yeah, that's extremely boring. I want pictures like they have here. This is nice, but it just
needs a little oomph, and
Yeah,
the
okay,
formatting
thank
is
you,
off
thank
too.
you.
That's all. And who's doing it? It should come from our PR, like marketing,
Yes.
not from legal.
Yes.
That's just, I think, what.
Well, and I think that just depends on who sends the email, because they'll work on it together to ensure.
Oh, that's fine, but I
Right.
don't think it should come from there. Yeah, I mean, I get
So-
why that's involved, but
I'm not so.
President Reese, members of the
even
board,
the formatting's like not good here. It's
if it so pleases the board, we can continue to do it the way that we've done it the last time, is just continue to put it in the superintendent's report on Fridays until we come up with a format and a style that pleases the board, and then start at that time.
That's fine.
So different samplings in the superintendent's report.
If it so pleases the board.
Yeah, President Reese, just for the record, I'm not trying to be picky, but, I just think it could be a little bit more fun, and it just needs a little work. It's on the right track, I don't know.
Yeah.
It is representing us and what we're doing here, so I do.
No, I understand, and that's why I said I think if it was a newsletter, I would think differently. I think it's just simply a summary. The intent of it was simply a summary to let people know the outcomes of the board meeting. So for me, I'm not worried about a bedazzled and.
We have to make it something that someone wants to read, though, and that's eye-catching, I won't read I wouldn't want to go through all this and read 5-0, and you know what I mean? I don't know. It's a good opportunity. I think it's on the right track. I do. But it just needs a little. We'll have Mr. Witovich bring in his bedazzler next time.
Does anyone else have any suggestions or comments? So right now we have a motion to approve with or without conditions in a second. So if we're not okay, or we don't want to stipulate the conditions, or, well, we have a motion out here that we have to vote on, and the motion is that we approve it. If we want to stipulate the conditions, I don't know, Ms. Good, can it be that the condition is stipulated that until the board sees a format that they like, that we don't do it? Or do we at this point decline it and say, keep showing us different formats until?
If you excuse me, but this is really something for the administration to send out, to communicate to the employees what has happened. If the board wants to have a communication, you could do that as a separate measure. I don't think your motion, as it is saying with or without conditions. So if you want to set some conditions, reword that to put those conditions in instead of saying with or without. And, pardon? That was to give you the leeway,
right,
to perhaps establish conditions if you wanted to.
My concern on this is it says board briefs. This is about us as board members, and somebody else is writing this. And I think, as reference to your comments about the administration writing this, when people read this, this is about us, and this is their perception about us. So either, another idea is before they send this out, have it run it by one of the board members to make sure we're comfortable with, because this is about us, and this is what the community perceives us as being.
Again, I think we just keep crossing over to what its intent is, and it's not going to the community. Like Ms. Good said, the intent is just to inform our staff what happened at the board meeting, what was approved, what wasn't approved. And that's the only intent of it, so that way our staff doesn't have to wait for the video.
Okay, that's fine. But on the July 19th meeting, we had a long meeting, and they only had 3 items on it. So the board meeting was longer, so see, they're choosing what they want to put on there. So that's my concern.
Well, that's why it came back to us, and they said, what does the board want? Because people were not happy that went out, and they sent that out. Just as a recap, they sent that out because a lot of people were asking what had happened in the July meeting regarding AR and regarding all that information, and their response was to send that out. It's something they were working on. Their response was to send that out to kind of calm the rumor mill and give everyone the information that happened at our board meeting prior to it going on the video.
President Reese, this is just a second thought, though. Instead of creating another thing to do, perhaps we should fix our technology and maybe more people should come to our meeting. I mean, if they really want to know about it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we do record it. It is going to be out there. You know what I mean?
Right, but sometimes it can take several days because of the new requirements.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I said,
Thinking out loud.
if the intent is to simply let our Higley staff know what happened at the board meeting, instead of creating more work for ourselves, and I know the concern was at the previous meeting, the concern was putting your own bias or your own opinion in it. That's why I just recommended, simply put, if alls we're trying to say is what happened at the board meeting, why create more work for yourself in a new format? Darlene has an electronic copy. They can fill in what voted.
Please.
Yes, please.
Please.
So why are we doing?
It's already there.
Yeah, so why?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we need to communicate and educate them.
With a link.
Approved. So the draft minutes that you send to Mr. Witovich get posted to the governing board as minutes. All right.
Okay, so this just seems
Simply-
duplicative. It really just does.
Simply put.
Maybe we should just communicate, hey, they're out there. This is the link.
Thank you.
And done.
That's perfect.
Or pull that copy and email it.
The link. Just
Either one.
the link. Send the
So,
link.
Teach them to fish.
all right, so on 9.4, we have a motion out there to approve. So everyone's clear. If we say yes, we're approving. If we say no, we're denying. I just want to clarify that.
Thank you.
So with that motion out there, any other comments, questions? Mr. Glover?
Yeah, sorry. So
No, you're fine.
we're not denying that the superintendent can send an email to staff if he wanted to, summarizing a meeting, right? I mean, he can still do that. We're not saying no to that, right? We're just saying you don't have to do a newsletter every single time, right?
No. That's not what.
Well, this is just a summary, so I guess a separate summary that the superintendent can send an email. So we just don't need to do a separate.
President Reese, members of the board, as superintendent, this is something that was designed to help communicate what happened at board meetings. As a superintendent, if my board is not in favor of this going out, I am definitely not comfortable sending something out with the same type of information, just not having the board's approval on it. That is no man's land for me, and I wouldn't want to anger my board by putting something out that you guys have denied tonight.
President Reese, I think what we're trying to say is here, I think the communication is good and the intent is good, but instead of just creating something entirely new, why don't we just send out a communication, an email after each meeting that the draft minutes are posted, here's the link. Instead of creating something, we're still communicating, we're conveying where that information is without creating a whole new thing, right? I mean, Darlene's already doing the work. I mean, why do more work?
President Reese, members of the board, and in all due honesty, I've heard, in my opinion, mixed messages tonight that we want something that's nicer, more beautiful, more something that conveys something that would be with the respect and style that the board would like to be sent out. And then I'm also hearing that just the board minutes that Mrs. Reach puts out there would be something that's sent out too. I am very confused.
Okay, Dr. Thomas and I can address that because I was saying that before I knew that Darlene posts these minutes, and they're already there. I didn't realize that this was duplicating efforts. Now that I'm educated on the fact that it is, this seems like a waste.
I'll follow up on that. I retract in reference to making this bedazzle. We already are doing something right now. We have enough things to do, and Mrs. Reese has a lot to do, and we don't need to add more to their plate already. The information's there. Let's just make sure the communication's out, and I'm fine with what you've got. Okay.
I would just like to make a comment on how this came up. And it was during the meetings that we had for the strategic plans. And one of the teachers who has been in the district for more than 10 years was talking about how there used to be a notice, if you will, a summary that would come out to the teachers, well, to all employees, after a board meeting, and how valued it made the employees feel to be given information so that they didn't have to read the whole minutes if they weren't interested in doing that. So that's where this idea came from. I had heard that at one of the sessions, and at the same time, Michelle Reese had the same idea, that it would be a good idea. Now, if you don't want it done, obviously it won't be done. But that's the background for where it came.
Well, and that's why I was saying it could be easy enough to just fill out the agenda, and you can just see the agenda items and how it was voted on, and it has the awards on it. I mean, I appreciate Mrs. Reach, and I know she works really hard on those minutes, and sometimes she has to watch video over and over again to capture them. So that's why I was saying, you know, we already have the agenda electronically. There's little sections for motions and votes, and that it could be simply enough to fill in an email. And I appreciate that explanation of how that came about. So
I do appreciate the thought behind it for communication. I do love that. But then I also think it's already out there, so.
And we can still communicate that it's
we are
out
still
there.
communicating, yes, so that's after I sit here and process all this.
It depends on how detailed the minutes are, so.
They're perfect.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Somebody has to read through it all. So, okay, so the motion is to approve administration sending a summary of board meeting action to all the staff. We had with or without conditions, so.
One more comment. This is going to look bad that we say, no, do not communicate to the, I am.
It's not about not communicating. It's about communicating what we already have.
But I'm just trying to think of as a employee tomorrow morning, they're going to hear, well, the board said don't do it.
Everybody will want to go see those minutes just to read Gary's jokes alone. That's why they will go.
All right, so all those in favor? Aye. Fine with okay. All those opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, motion carries 4-1. I don't mind
No,
a
it doesn't
summary.
carry. It doesn't carry 1 to 4.
Well, sorry, it fails 4-1 or 1-4. Okay, now I'm getting all. No, I have it written down that way. All right, so 9.5. I move that we approve the future district calendar format as reflected through stakeholder surveys.
Second.
This is what we went over in our work study, and thank you, Dr. Mallerwein, for going over that. The format that was reflected was to continue on the 2-2-2. We would have 2 weeks at fall, 2 weeks during the winter, and 2 weeks during the spring. That is what is being recommended for approval. Any other questions, comments? We did have some discussion in work study regarding the pros and cons of it. Yes.
I just, again, want to reiterate what I said in work study, that the data is very clear to me what our community and teachers all want. And in the same token, I want everybody to know that we did read all the comments. I personally read every comment, and that we're not going to please everybody in this situation, and we do take into account, and we do listen, and we do hear the concerns of those that chose option 2 and 3, and but the data shows something else. So I just want everybody to know we did look at that.
There was consistent data between staff, between community, that the option 1 to stay the 2-2-2 certainly was the highest one for each stakeholder category.
I think if Dr. Mellenheim, if you could give us the stats, I think it's important for the community to understand the results on the results on the survey in reference to you could do that for us so that is public record. I think that would be important.
I'm do them from memory.
Okay, it's memory's fine.
I'll do it from memory. Okay. It was 79.9% for option 1. I believe it was around 10.6% for option 2, and I think it was 9.8% for option 3. So it was really an 8-to-1 ratio from one to the other 2 options.
Okay, thank you.
And that carried in all stakeholder categories.
Yes, the all stakeholders were very similar.
So that was
the
the
lowest
top.
one was 76% of classified. That was the lowest. Parents were 86%.
I think it's important for the community to understand it wasn't close. It was a huge, you said 79% of the community and wanted the option number 1. So
Excuse me, teachers were, staff, certified teachers was 86%, parents were 79%, and classified was 76%, all for option 1.
Sure. Thank you.
And as we've talked about before, there's pros and cons to all the options that we were given. And I have said before that I will vote a way for my community that maybe I don't necessarily agree with, and that will still happen tonight because the survey was clear between our staff and our community. While I don't feel that that's the best calendar for us, but that we asked and we got answers, so.
President Reese, I just want to reiterate that too, that I didn't vote personally, even though I have children invested in the community, because I just wanted to keep an open mind as to what exactly the community wanted, and they spoke loud and clear, and we just need to, remember that.
Any other questions, comments, Mr. Glover?
Madam President, Dr. Thompson, I'm going to put you on the spot in a second, but I think it's important. One of the comments that I saw frequently was, why are we doing this? And just for the public, school boards approve calendars, and they approve them in cycles. And so I wasn't here for the last cycle, but we spoke. So could you just speak to why this happened to come up again? And also, I also want to say what I like about this, and going back to our strategic plan, is this involved a lot of stakeholders, and I really like that we followed the plan, and the results speak for themselves. And is it possible to post just the results, not the people's comments? People might like to see that in real time. They might be helpful. Anyway, but can you speak to why this came up again?
Absolutely. President Reese, members of the board. Last year, we did bring 3 calendars to the board. It was on the cycle. We usually bring 3 years worth of calendars to the board on every other year cycle. So we would have our community and our employees know what the calendar cycle will be for the next couple of years so they can make plans appropriately. Last year, there was discussion from the board that there was concerns with starting so early in the year, and so they asked that we go out to our public and our staff again, that we get a survey results to find out if this is the direction that we wanted to move forward in with the future. We took the recommendations of the board. We put together a calendar committee, which took into account parents, staff members, administrators, and business members, and put that committee together. Came up with 3 separate options: an early start option, with 2 weeks at fall, 2 weeks at winter, 2 weeks at spring, an option with a week and a half at fall, 2 weeks at winter, a week and a half at spring, and then another option where we started later would be 1 week in the fall, 2 weeks at winter, and 1 week at spring. And then we put that information out to the community and staff again this year, and the results came back as Dr. Mallory presented them earlier and just a minute ago to the board.
And just to kind of follow up and piggyback on that, we were finishing our first cycle of being on this new modified. We hadn't been on it for very long. When we first started, I want to say like even our start date, the first year we went to it was like August 1st or something. We certainly weren't this early into July. And so that was part of the reason and discussion of going back out, understanding that when we first went to this modified, it was like July 31st, or it was still later, and each year it's creeping earlier and earlier. Like next year it's going to be July 22nd, and so it was a matter of trying to see, after going through it for a couple years and that start time or that start date moving earlier, is this what we still wanted to do? And so that was part of the reason that discussion.
Right, and it was, the time had come that we had to do this
Yes,
again.
yes.
Right, because it was, yeah.
Also, President Reese, I don't know how to quite word it, but I just want to make sure that our community, we did hear the concerns too. Like, I just want to reiterate that I did read, and I know we're not going to please everybody at this time, and I just hope that eventually maybe, and as I said in work study too, that perhaps it's going to be that all our school districts will get on the same calendar around here, and that there won't be this, well, my neighbor across the street and this and that. It's just really hard around here when we have so many different schools having so many different school schedules, and I heard the parent upset, well, they can't get a long, summer job in high school because our summers are shorter. And I heard all those, and I have compassion for that, but I'm also going to honor the majority, just so you know.
Yeah. And we did have those discussions. We had those discussions how it impacts sports and at the high school and the middle school level. We also had the discussions on how it impacts those students taking accelerated classes. And we did also have the discussion of our intercessions, that we need to honor what we were talking about when we first went to this modified, and making the intercessions, having it available for interventions and for those that are struggling so they don't fall further behind. And we had those discussions, and we had the discussions, I know with a parent with the elementary school kids, that after the 2-week break, it takes you 3 days to get them back into the routine, and then it's the weekend again. And so we did have all those discussions, and we understand all of that. But our community and our staff overwhelmingly selected the same option.
President Reese, members of the board, I would also like to remind the community that it's very difficult with the testing requirements of the state to push it back later because of the testing requirements and getting enough study days in before the testing requirements of the state. And that's why we're backed up into July, is because some of the requirements of the state. We cannot push into June. We have to back up into July because of some of the testing requirements from the state of Arizona.
Well, and that's what we had talked about this year too, like this past year with spring break, coming back from spring break and going to AZ Merit, to allow them time to prepare for that. So those have all been certainly known and discussed and noted. So,
and just to clarify that we are just voting on the 222 tonight,
yes,
and then it's going to come back again with the
actual
calendars,
calendar,
and then we hope to approve 3 years.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes.
Correct.
So this is just the format of the 2 weeks in the 2 weeks fall break, 2 weeks winter break, 2 weeks spring break, and then at our next board meeting, 3 years worth of calendars reflecting that format will come before us. Any other questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed?
Opposed. And just because I want to, on the record, represent that 20% that did not support option 1.
All right, motion carries 4-1. Got it right that time. All right, 9.6. I move that we approve new policy ACE, the website accessibility.
Second.
Any questions or comments on that policy? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye, sorry.
Motion carries 5-0. I move that we approve the adoption of amendment policy GCL, professional staff schedules and calendars. I'm waiving the second read.
Second.
Anyone have any questions on that? On the policy GCL?
I just wanted to ask just so that we can, I've already talked to Dr. Thomason, but just for the record, this is talking about before school. So what about after school?
President Rice, members of the board, at this time, the area of concern for teachers with children in the district that attended school was the before school schedule. After school, there's opportunities for students to have different activities and that type of thing. So the major concern for our staff was basically 10 minutes before school started, so our staff members would not have to pay the fees to send their students to Kids Club before school for 10 minutes.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Glover.
it's just coming on to me right now, and I should have talked to you about this the other day. So this is just our elementary children. So what about our some of our like middle school teachers that have a preschooler? The hours don't line up that way, that they are on campus and then they drop off their preschooler prior.
At this time, President Reese, members of the board, that has not presented an issue for the district. Should that come up, I believe we would handle that on an individual basis.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and to be clear, that it doesn't reference just elementary.
It does.
I didn't see elementary in there. Hold on.
Oh wait, no, sorry.
No, it's
sorry.
not just elementary. Okay. I was like, I did not see elementary there. Yes.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing, sorry.
Okay, so it doesn't, it's all staff.
That's
The-
where I got it, I'm sorry.
Gotcha. The example. Yeah.
So, Madam President, I just want to thank Ms. Richards. As soon as I read this, as a teacher and somebody who dragged kids with me to school, I think this is great for those teachers. It's a really nice thing to think about them and to show them that somebody's considering what they're doing, and on a personal level, it would have saved me probably thousands of dollars.
And it's a great marketing tool for new teachers as well.
Any other questions or comments?
Mm-mm.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Did you say aye,
I said
Ally?
aye.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Okay, then that motion carries 5-0. 9.8, I move that we approve the award of weatherization of walls at Williamsfield High School, IFB 17-08-17 to Pete King as the proposed bid of $210,720.
Second.
Any questions or comments on this?
Sure. What is the timeline on this?
President Reese, members of the board, some of this weatherization has already started the process through funds through the school facilities board. At this point in time, we want to continue the process and start over the fall break and get that school completed as soon as possible, to be quite honest with you. But we're also following up with the school facilities board to see how much funding we can get the state to pay for before we move forward.
So it won't be a disruption to the students or the staff?
That is correct.
Perfect.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. So we do have some future agenda items, professional development overview and how it's funded. That's scheduled to come in October. To get an update on Bring Your Own Device for Higley High School, that's scheduled for November. Overview of services provided by guidance counselors, that's scheduled for December. I did get your email, Mr. Witovich, and we'll make a note for your request regarding orchestra on a work study. Any other future agenda items? Okay, so we will go on to 11.0 executive session. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A3, the governing board may convene an executive session for legal advice in regards to policy. Motion on that one, right? Okay, I move that we move into executive session.
Support.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Our regular meeting will adjourn for right now, and we'll go into executive session.
Here's this.